Drummer, what do you got? Drummer! Oh, that sucks. Oh, wow, that was so... Oh, that fucking sucked. Oh, that fucking sucked.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John, and with me as always is Daniel Terry, drinking a nice, delicious cold beverage. How are you doing this evening?
Doing good. Decided to go for some space dust. I have kind of gone on sort of a diet, in the sense that I'm just trying not to drink as much beer and eat as much food. It's nothing crazy. I'm not like posting a 12-step program or anything on Facebook. I'm just kind of like chilling and just trying to be a little bit more conscious of my intake. But it's been about a week or two since I had any space dust, so I was like, I can, have a space dust or two on the, on one episode.
I am drinking a Southern Tier Brewing Company Vanilla Whipped Milkshake IPA.
Yeesh. That's a lot.
Yes. In one of the interviews you'll hear coming up, you'll hear me drinking it for the first time on air, and I decided it was so good, I went and bought every single can that they had left at the place I got it from. These only come in 4-packs. I think I bought 7 of them because someone had opened the second to last package. So I bought those and some trusty old Evan Williams.
Nice.
Actually, the other drink, because usually, I'm a... Dan can sometimes see the assorted beverages I like to drink all at one time. So I have a Zero Sugar Powerade purple, because we don't talk about them in flavors, they are the colors.
Right.
So I have purple Zero Sugar Powerade. But these are my new thing, my go-tos. These, where's my camera for Dan? These sparkling ices. So they have these sparkling ice waters.
Nice.
They're kind of like a carbonated water. But then they just came out with these plus caffeine ones. And boy, these blue raspberry boys are really fucking good. All the flavors that they have of those things are really good. If you're just into kind of like fizzy soda water, like just soda water, not like pop. They have some interesting flavors like a ginger lime that's really good. Just a little something different. They're usually about $1.20 or so they're relatively cheap.
So it's like a flavored club soda, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Kind of like an alternative to LaCroix or, Buble or whatever those things are, that are kind of flooding the market now.
Yeah. Haven't dipped into the to the water stuff yet. Probably should.
It's all good. It's fun to just completely get different things. Although I do have this weird conspiracy theory that Coca-Cola is doing those Coke remix machines just solely so they can collect data from people and go, oh, everyone's doing these orange vanilla Cokes, so let's can that and then sell it as something new.
Right.
Although if you ever do one of those, you have to get grape vanilla Sprite. That is super delicious.
You had me at grape, not so much at vanilla.
The vanilla is just kind of like a little accent flavor more than anything.
Gotcha. I guess it's perfectly mixed then.
Yes. All that aside, this episode's guest is Mikey from Islander. This was a fun one. Mikey has been on a lot of the podcasts that we are friends with over at the Talk To Me podcast, Good Company with Bowling. And, after hearing him and his brother over on the Good Company with Bowling episode, really was kind of like, it seems like Mikey's really primed and fit for, a long-form interview, chat kind of a thing. And, just very down-to-earth and very knowledgeable and very open about a lot of his experiences. And, those always make for the best podcast episodes. So, reached out to his publicist and set something up, and a day later, here we are. And, it's kind of funny. He was talking about his new puppy that he just got, and, I was kind of dealing with the same thing, so that was kind of fun, talking about puppy issues where he's like, oh, shit, my dog's chewing on something, or, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that was kind of hilarious. I actually really enjoyed this chat because you guys kind of got into some of the more industry side of things and more specifically like band behaviors and how bands treat each other and collaborations and things like that. And that's something that, I even see even with what we do in the podcasting stuff, how, I think there are some podcasters that view other podcasts as competition.
Absolutely.
In a way. And, ever since I've been doing it, at least, which I guess is probably like, I don't know, like 3.5 years now, I never really like looking at it that way because, sure, you might get the same guest as somebody else every now and again. But I don't know, like in a certain way, it's like as a listener, isn't it more enjoyable whenever two people interview the same person and you get a more complete picture, of what they're talking about, and things like that. So like in that sense, it's like with all of my podcast friends that I've made over the years, I want to see all of us do well, not just, one of us be at the top or, which is why, we're always name dropping other podcasts. It's not to make ourselves sound cooler. It's just that there might be people listening to our show that, have never heard of the Roach Coach podcast or, there's people that have, maybe listening to Talk to Me and never heard of Brewtally Speaking and so on and so forth. And so I feel like all of us kind of collectively, at least in our little scene, Scott Bowling, people like that, we're always kind of name dropping each other just to let everybody know that, like, hey, if you like what we're doing over here, you're going to really like what my friends over here are doing.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thing. We've kind of beaten that to death over the years of, having you and I collectively on the show together is kind of there not being competition. Like, even collectively between you and I, there's some people who seemingly still don't believe that you and I are on bad terms or have any issues. And I know sometimes, you weren't able to, having a newborn, weren't able to, and having a completely different job, weren't always able to get episodes out. So sometimes it was a matter of me going, I got to hurry up and do this so I can edit it and get it out in time.
Sure.
And, it's funny that people would be like, oh, so what's going on with Dan? And it's like, nothing. He's busy. He has 4 fucking kids. There's nothing going on.
I asked him to do it, and he said no.
Yeah, he was busy. So I went on, and it's fine. He'll be back. And, it's just kind of funny. And I think, speaking to that part of the conversation with Mikey from Islander, I do think it's interesting. And I was kind of surprised that he did answer the question where I was like, do you think kind of being associated with these people is kind of a hindrance that people maybe don't think that you've earned any of the things that you've gotten so far? And I was, really...
It's a tough question.
I thought it was really cool that he basically answered it as honestly as he did. And I mean, selfishly, I think it would have been kind of interesting to hear who are some of the bands maybe that do things the wrong way or are kind of, maybe not the wrong way, but are just not as genuine and nice as, like, he's talking about the dudes from Korn being and Sonny from POD and like all those dudes and basically all the camps that he always is, hanging out with and talking to. But I mean, let's be real. I think if you know anything about those bands or those people, I think it's safe to assume that you would assume those people are as nice and genuine as they appear to be, because look at the career and longevity they've had. You can't do that if you're a prick.
The people that we've talked to, they've always been super chill. I mean, I can't think of any episode that we've posted where anybody's ever been like totally full themselves, hard to deal with, that sort of thing. And usually it's the more, it's the more famous the band, the chiller the dude is what I'm starting to see.
Absolutely. And speaking of chill dudes and all of that, let's get into my conversation with Mikey from Islander. It's a little bit longer, so let's get right to it, and we'll talk to you on the other side. So I had the pleasure of talking to Mikey of Islander, whose latest single, It's the End of the World as We Know It, out now. How are you doing on this Friday amongst all of this crazy shit going on?
I'm doing well. I'm doing better than I deserve. So I'm here I am, just hanging out with my puppy. Yeah.
I actually just got one of those a week from tomorrow, actually, as of when we're recording.
Oh, what kind?
We don't know. We think it's a It kind of has more of a shepherd like face, but it's kind of tiny. A friend of mine actually adopted the brother, and he looks more beagle, and the sister looks like a full-on black lab. So we're not entirely sure what it is, because it's just kind of, there's so many mixes of other things from the other parts of the litter. But I don't know. We're taking her to a vet soon once all this kind of blows over. So hopefully, maybe they can tell us.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's a dog, so those.
Yeah, it's definitely made the week, this past week, a lot more tolerable.
Yeah, I feel you.
Speaking to this latest single, what made you guys choose this song in particular, as opposed to something else to cover?
For us, I always try to do things that are relevant and in the moment. And we were in California about 2.5-3 weeks ago when all this was kind of really about to hit the fan. We were getting off of Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, and we heard NBA was canceled. That's the first thing that kind of made people, feel like, okay, maybe there's more to this than just whatever. So I said we should jump in the studio and record It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine. And at first it was kind of like, let's do this because this is like the song of the time, of the moment, kind of like No Doubt did on like Y2K on MTV back in the day. And except Y2K wasn't real, this is real. And once we recorded it, we didn't really know what we were going to do with it. But then my brother's in the band, he's the keyboard player. Our aunt in New York City ended up getting COVID-19 and passing away from it. So we used the song to spread awareness, to wash your hands and to stay home, but also we're raising funds for the NYC Low Income Artist Freelancer Relief Fund. And that's all we care about right now, man. Just spreading the message, the positive love, and not trying to make people feel unencouraged. We want people to know that they're not alone, and that even if it is the end of the world, or it feels like the end of the world rather, what is it that's making you feel fine? That's kind of what we're going at.
It was kind of interesting because, lyrically, this song still holds up, all the decades later of this. And I actually had thought that listening to your song, there were a couple of lyrics that you had changed, but it was more to the effect of you guys actually vocally made it to where you could understand all of the lyrics, which, it's funny you bring up that that No Doubt cover, because if you remember, the people, like the production people, were holding up the cue cards with the lyrics because Gwen couldn't remember the lyrics because they go so fast. And it's one of those things that I kind of thought that was really interesting, that, there seemed to be more of an emphasis on the lyrics in your version versus any I've ever heard, any covers, that is. And so I kind of wanted to know what made you take that approach to having the lyrics kind of really be front and center.
Hey, well, for me, I mean, being the lyricist, I when I was learning the song, I was sitting there with it, and I was like, first of all, Michael Stipe is a genius for writing this. And
he's got bars.
Second, yeah, he does, man. He's got them. And I was like, second of all, if I'm going to do this, I want people to know that I nailed the lyrics. And that's the truth. That's really what it came down to. So we actually recorded it. We made sure to do it in the same tempo as theirs, but we changed up some of the rhythm. So it feels a little different, but it's actually, if you put them side by side, they're the same tempo. So
yeah, it was kind of interesting, just thinking about that. And it is kind of funny, being as old as I am, that, the Y2K cover, the New Year's Eve cover that MTV used to do when they would do the whatever New Year's Eve show that it was called. It's, it was always funny because I think Papa Roach was on, and I think they did Lithium, if I'm not mistaken.
POD was on it too. They did Get Up, Stand Up by Bob Marley.
That's right, man. It's so weird to think about how, I've actually kind of talked, recently to a handful of different people over the podcast the last couple of weeks of, just MTV and how big it actually was. And it's not really an avenue that people have, because I was talking more about, at my age, there are a lot of bands and records I was getting into at the time that some people kind of call me out and they're like, dude, you were like 7 when that came out. You were really listening to that? And it's like, yeah, because MTV was on in my house all the time. So yeah, I was listening to, a lot of hip hop thanks to, MTV Rap, MTV Raps, or 120 Minutes coming into the alternative scene, and, staying up and watching Headbangers Ball and getting into, death metal and so forth. So yeah, MTV was pretty cool for introducing a lot of people to a lot of different things. And I think that it's kind of interesting because I feel like you guys are an interesting band and the fact that it's kind of hard to pigeonhole you into anything. And I think that is something that's really interesting because it reminds me of a band like seeing Faith No More as a kid and being like, what is this? Or a band like Fishbone and being like, it's rock, but it's kind of this other thing that I guess is ska that I don't know what that is. But it's interesting, you know, thinking about bands back then taking risk and not being defined by any genre or style. And it seems like you guys are kind of doing the same thing. And I don't know if people realize how adventurous that is and how refreshing it is to see a band, especially a quote-unquote newer one, doing that. Are you finding that?
Yeah, dude, that's an honor, first and foremost, to hear you say that, even to put us in the same sentence as Faith No More or whatever. But, like, I know that for us, we grew up listening to tons of different music, and we didn't set out to try to, you know, have a certain sound or whatever. We do what Islander is, and whatever Islander is just kind of what we feel at that moment. We feel like it all correlates and feels the same, even though it sounds different from each other. Like one song can be a little different, but it all feels like Islander. But that's because we grew up listening to, you know, Bad Brains and Bjork and Depeche Mode and Converge and Zayo, all these different bands that kind of just gelled into whatever it is that we're doing. So
this is typically a question I'd never ask, but it was something I was kind of thinking of in correlation to just kind of the I had two thoughts as I was kind of listening to everything today and kind of taking it all in and just kind of going like, man, it reminds me of this. And there's so many different influences I hear, but also just a lack of defined, genre that you're going for. Is I was kind of thinking of like Island and Misfit Toys for some reason, but then I was kind of thinking more Island and Islander and kind of wondering, does the name kind of represent if you were stuck on an island, you're kind of trying to incorporate all the things that you would want to hear to keep you, you know, happy or what, I don't know necessarily the word or adjective I want to use, but just kind of thinking about like that, where it's like, we want to be the perfect like mixtape compilation band for everybody who there's a little bit of something here for everybody.
Wow, dude, I've never thought of it that way. And that's the first time I've heard that, but I think that's my favorite analogy for our band name yet. Our band name, our original guitar player, we were trying to come up with a band name. We were going to be called Elders, but there was this hardcore band that we found that had that name. And then afterwards, we thought about it. And we were like, you know what? It's probably good that we didn't name our band that, because if we're ever like the Rolling Stones still doing it, everybody's like, man, you guys are Elders. So we were like, no, let's not do that. So he had an Islander IPA beer koozie sitting next to him. It's a beer from San Diego, California. And he just said, how about we call the band Islander? And we were like, cool. Like, we don't like any band name, so let's just pick one.
Yeah, it was just one of those that it's like, typically I don't really ever ask or indulge in so what does your band name mean? But it was just something, like I said, I kind of kept coming back to it, and especially thinking about the R.E.M. cover, because it's, in a sense, it makes total sense to pick it because of the time we're in. However, I don't know that, you know, R.E.M. would be on a lot of people's radar as far as a band where they'd be like, oh, I really dig R.E.M. and what they do. And as I've gotten older, I kind of really appreciate it, so much to the effect of when Jonathan Davis put out his solo record, there was like a mandolin kind of in that first single that he had. And I was like, that sounds so similar to the Losing My Religion mandolin solo that's kind of in it, or the melody that's in it. And I was like, man, I'm that old dude now who's comparing Korn to R.E.M. or Jonathan Davis, that is, I should say.
Yeah, dude, I love that guy. I'm good friends with him.
Speaking of good friends, Scott Bowling, you were on his show, I think a while ago now, but he just reposted the audio version of that recently. And, you know, you guys were kind of talking about sort of being in this, I'll call it a holding pattern with a label at this point, or, you know, and I don't know if people realize sort of the intricacies of when you're doing something with the label. You know, they have projections of, we'd like you to get this done at this time because of these tours, like the things going on fiscally in the calendar year and so forth. It seems like you guys are just avid creators, always working on something, just kind of making your new thing. And so I was kind of wondering, because you didn't necessarily get into it too much, have you found that being in more of a traditional label system has kind of hindered or helped your creative patterns at all?
I think both. And I know it sounds funny and political to say both, but it really has. It's they've given us so many opportunities to go write with other people and all these different producers. Like we've never done co-writes before, and we didn't know what that meant when we first got on the label, because in the past, Islander has been a band. We write our own songs, and I know the R.E.M. song's a cover. We've never done a cover till that, but I'm saying like for our originals, we write all of our own music, and a lot of bands don't do that anymore. So for us, when we heard about co-writes, it scared us a little bit. But when we went out to California and wrote with like all these different people, we realized they weren't writing our songs. They were playing producer. So we were sitting down and we were scared they were going to be handing me the lyrics and the guitar parts. And it wasn't like that at all, man. Like, so, I don't know. I think the thing for us is we have so many ideas and we're visionaries in a way that like my biggest influences aren't even in music. It's like, I think about Walt Disney eating dog food in Illinois just to try to make this company work. And now I look at what Disney is, and I'm like, I want that. I want to be, instead of a musician, I want to be an Imagineer. I want to use this band as an art project instead of just being like, oh, we're a band, I'm a singer. Like I want it to like just be farther and bigger than all that. So I think for us, being the smaller band that we are on the label, opposed to bands like Motley Crue and Papa Roach and, Five Finger, whatever, like stuff like that, I think that for us, we're kind of having to prove ourselves right now. But we also, we welcome the challenge. We want them to know that we're not just another flash in the pan. We're a career band, and we have deep roots in DIY culture. So we just hope that they're ready to work with us on that.
It's kind of interesting. A very small amount of people I've had on the show actually kind of have talked openly about co-writes and co-writers and so forth. The thing that's always interesting to me is I feel like as long as the best version of whatever it is you're trying to do is what's coming out, I don't think it really necessarily matters how you got there. And I think it's interesting that, typically when you think of co-writers, a lot of people think of pop people and they're like, well, they don't write their own stuff and so on and so forth. And I feel like in the last handful of years, people in the rock and metal world have kind of become more open to the idea of working with co-writers and actually coming out with some of the best stuff that they've ever come out. I mean, I'm kind of looking at Body Count as a great example. They're kind of cherry picking the best of everything in current metal and hardcore and just putting out, like, their last 3 records are just always a step above everything they've been doing, but they've always been a great band. But now they're able to fire really on all cylinders because they're able to work with people who are able to bring out the best of that band, and working with Will Putney as a producer who also is a great songwriter in his own right. And so I wondered, when you say and tell people like, oh, we're going to work with these people, is there any kind of like, oh man, you guys don't write your own shit? Or like, is there any still kind of a backlash in the industry, or at least in your scene, of that? Or is it kind of starting to become more acceptable now?
It is more acceptable. And again, like, there are bands that they show up and they're handed their lyrics. I'm not joking. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I'm not going to say who it is and throw them under the bus, but there's bands that show up and they say, where's my song? Islander can't ever be that band. Like, we have something to say. We have a message. We have integrity in art. And, but at the same time, I'm a learner. I want to learn from people, and I want them to tell me if something sucks. Like, if I come in with something, I want them to say, well, there's a cooler way to do what you're trying to do. And for me, that's a lot of what co-writing is. It's just more than playing producer and being that outside ear and helping me be the best me that I can be. And that's what they're doing for everybody in our band. And so far, we've just loved that whole process. So we haven't experienced, letting other people just hand us songs, but we know for a fact, just from working with, these producers, we get in there and they're like, do you want me just to hand you a song? And we're like, no. They're like, thank God. So I'm sorry, my dog is insane right now.
That's fine. My old dog, before we had to put her down on New Year's Day, you could usually hear her in the background barking at something, so it's kind of used to it.
Yeah, he's about a 10-month-old puppy, and he doesn't understand that I'm doing interviews and stuff, so he's just kind of doing whatever he wants. This is real life, though. This is social distancing interviews.
Yeah, I think this is the second or third one I've done since all this really has been going on, just because I'm trying not to fall into the trap of, there's so many interviews available, but then realizing since I have a puppy, I can't like just hole up in my office anymore and just spend, 5 or 6 hours editing a couple of podcasts or doing a bunch. So it's like, all right, I got to find that sweet spot of like doing them and still staying on track of the one a week. But it's proving to be a little bit difficult this last week or so.
I feel you.
Actually kind of something, you were talking about, knowing, Jonathan Davis and, you tour and know a lot of people in the industry that have been around for a long time. And I've kind of wondered, do you feel like, I feel like you are someone who, like you said, constantly wants to learn, constantly is trying to just soak up any knowledge you can. So, kind of how has it been being able to become friends with some of these people who have had legendary careers, who have kind of not only sustained a lot of different genres and trends and so forth, but have kind of put their stamp on those trends and or being trendsetters themselves? What are you gleaming from some of the people that are now your peers and friends in the industry?
Dude, that's huge for us. When we started, being noticed by a lot of those bigger bands, we were on Mayhem Festival 2014, and about the third day in, we started noticing that some of the Korn guys were standing on stage watching us. Avenged Sevenfold, Suicide Silence, all those bands that were on the tour. And the tour ended. I had my own bunk on Korn's bus, and we were touring in a van with no air conditioning. And, we were sleeping in seats, like, because the van didn't have any benches or anything. It was a conversion van, like a family van. So that's just the kind of guys they are. They're relational guys. We're a relational band. We try so hard just to, build those relationships, not just for business, but sincere. Like, I don't care if you're a rock star or, just the person running merch for the night or whatever at these big festivals or whatever. I want to know you, and I want to care about you and who you are. And I don't want to just, kiss ass my way through the industry, if that's so to speak. Like, right. Kiss. Sorry. I'm my dog. I'm sorry. He's really, yeah. If I'm looking away, I'm just seeing what he's destroying. So anyways, I just don't want to kiss ass my way through the industry. I want to be genuine, and we've met a lot of genuine people that way. So as far as like Jonathan Davis and stuff, Korn's taken us out 3 times, and they've just been the best friends in this industry that you could have. And something I've noticed is there's been bands that we've toured with that aren't as big as bands like Korn or POD or whatever, and Papa Roach, and there's bands that treat you like trash, and it's the ones that think that that's what the rock stars do. But then there's bands that are actually big and they get it. And Korn is one of those bands for sure. And they're always giving us their pizza and their hotel rooms. And POD's been the same way to us. Like, Sonny will give us his hotel rooms. And like, it's just crazy. Like the amount of love and mentorship they've given us. And Jonathan Davis, he actually recorded a song with us one time when we were like riding down the road on his bus. He invited me on his bus to live for a few days on the 20th anniversary of the first album for Korn. And he was like, let's record this song, while we're going down the road, and it'll be a cool story. So I don't know, I don't even have enough good things to say about those guys, man. Those guys have helped us tremendously.
So, something that was interesting, as you were kind of saying a little bit ago, talking about, what you've learned from Jonathan and all these bands and artists that you've had the pleasure of, becoming friends with. Something I've kind of wondered, the industry is basically all about who you know and the connections that you make. But I do wonder, because you're still relatively viewed as a quote unquote new band, have you seen that those connections have kind of also maybe been a hindrance where people think that you guys aren't putting in the work, whether it be from other industry people or other band people that you've toured with?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question because that doesn't get brought up a lot. But basically, some people end up thinking, number one, that because we toured with Korn and Papa Roach and all these bands, they think we're rich. Like they literally are just like, how, like, your band is rich, you're so rich. And it's like, dude, I don't have any money. That's just the truth. Like, when you tour with some of these bands, what you're actually doing is getting paid less because you're doing it more for the exposure. So that's one thing that's kind of difficult sometimes, people thinking I'm rich. Other than that, I would say that there's been times where I think people think that we were friends with some of these bands prior to being a band even or something. I don't know. I just kind of get that vibe where they think that they're helping because they're just being nice. And it's like, nah, dude, like they had never heard of my band. And that's why they started helping, because they were like a fan of the band. And sometimes it's just hard, just also being associated in the sense that just because you're friends with all these bands, people think that that's your genre or that you sound exactly like those bands, and your success starts being based off of what those bands are doing instead of what your own band is doing. And you get a fan base that, you can't pick and choose your fan base. And I'm not the kind of guy that cares what any of my fan base believes or looks like or listens to. I'm just thankful for any single person that's going to listen to our jams and enjoy them or whatever. And for those that don't, that's totally fine too. There's tons of bands, for different people for that very reason. But I think that sometimes those fans can just end up liking us because they're like, oh, I'm a fan of Korn or POD or Papa Roach, and now I'm going to like Islander. And it's like, I don't know. It doesn't feel as genuine sometimes when people are like just a fan of your band because they're a fan of another band. But, guilty by association.
It's just interesting because, like I've kind of alluded to and have said quite a bit on this podcast, I'm getting ready to turn 36 in a couple of months. And I remember, and I sound so old when I say this, but it's like, I remember, when bands and the scene kind of were very involved with one another. Like, it wasn't uncommon to see bands touring with each other because they were friends and taking like their up and coming friends out, and I know we keep harping on Korn, but they represent so much of what I'm kind of talking about, with starting with Elementary, their own record label, and bringing the bands out that they were putting on their record label because they believed in those bands. And, then seeing, Deftones dudes taking out some of those bands, and just, it felt like there was more camaraderie back in the day. And so while some people seemingly are, I don't want to say talking shit on bands basically for having friends in the industry and kind of getting quote unquote hooked up, only in the sense of not financially typically, but just as far as the opportunities you're getting. But it is one of those things where I think that's what creates a larger scene, is people supporting one another. And I don't feel like I see that as much anymore. And it feels like everyone's so quick to tear it down. And instead of just kind of being like, I think a great example of that really is what Bad Wolves, the relationship between Bad Wolves and In Fire from the Gods Now to Five Finger Death Punch. Zoltan obviously manages both of those bands, but it's great to see that they're helping them and trying to usher in another, big club-sized band, or even basically an arena-sized band, hopefully, if they groom them well enough and people like seemingly like them. And I just don't understand why it seems like bands are in such competition with one another that they're not willing to help each other and kind of put the proverbial ladder down to help each other out, as opposed to basically kind of going in this together in an industry that doesn't really give a fuck about anybody other than the dollars and cents that they can make off of you for however long that is.
Dude, you just hit the nail on the head. That's a lot of the issue. I remember, growing up, and yeah, like you're saying, like the Family Values tour, and even more like for me, I grew up more in the hardcore scene and stuff. I feel like the bands just had more of a family vibe to them, kind of like everybody was almost like in each other's bands almost. It was like you were in each other's bands. I don't know how else to explain it, but now it's like everybody's trying to backstab each other and get the one up and be the bigger band, and it's like, dude, like quit worrying so much about your own band being the biggest band and just start loving on each other and loving on other people, because when your band is about being rock stars, it puts me off so bad. Oh my gosh, it puts me off. But like for me, the bands that always made it special were the ones that stopped being about themselves and they were always about the fans, about me. And I want to be that for other people, because growing up and seeing bands like POD and Blindside and stuff, and how I remember there was a Blindside documentary, in the Blindside documentary, Christian, the singer, he said that the shows started being special when they stopped being about the band and started being about everybody else. And that's what Islander always tries to do. We try to make it about everybody else because we let the fans know, look, until you show up, it's just practice. there's nothing here magical about what we're doing. It's what you guys are doing that's magical. So I think that a lot of bands just don't know that. They don't come from that, and they just think that being in a band is supposed to be getting your band as big as possible. That's not what being in a band is.
Right. Man, Blindside, I love that band. And that's, it's funny, I don't think a lot of people realize that as POD was kind of breaking here in the States anyway, with fundamental elements of Southtown, I remember the video for Southtown actually, Wove is wearing a Blindside, I think he's wearing a Blindside tank top?
No, it's Sonny's wearing a Blindside shirt, and Love was wearing a Zayo jersey.
Okay. I haven't seen that video in a while.
Totally.
At that time, I had gotten really big into Blindside, especially Silence, that record at that time. And, both of them kind of championing each other when they're both kind of breaking, but POD kind of broke first and bigger. So it was just kind of like, like we're basically saying and reiterating is that, bands helped each other back then, and I feel like there's just so much competition, and I don't know if it's just because of album sale, like the album sale world isn't the same anymore. Like bands aren't getting big advances. The only way that you're able to make a decent living is touring, and that everyone's just looking at each other as competition. And I just always kind of look to the pop and hip hop worlds where you see so much collaborations going on and people seemingly not caring as much about, well, I don't fuck with this person because they might take away something from me financially or whatever. And it's like, you know what? Have this feature on my track. I'll bring this person out on tour with me, and then we can do this song, and it's going to make everyone happy, and people are going to be so stoked on it. And, all it's going to do is maybe their fans will end up finding out about me or vice versa because I like what they're doing. They like what I'm doing. And it just seems to be, those two genres have always done really good and are always typically bigger than rock and metal. And I always just kind of look at it and go why can't the rock, hardcore, metal scene kind of be as collaborative anymore? And what is causing it? And the only thing I've come up with is that it's about money and maybe an industry turning everyone against each other. And that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. I think that some people think that this is, competition's good for business and whatnot, but not in rock and roll. It's one of the weirdest things. Like, I know that, I don't know, I know the right answers and stuff for business, but I'm telling you, I agree with you 1,000% because, you look at hip hop and pop and everything, and it's just all the crossover promotion and everything that they go into. And now that stuff, they're not even rappers and pop artists. It's you're just superstars. They're Lil Yachty's doing voices for superhero movies and they're doing Sprite commercials and all kind of stuff. And it's rock music is just so stale and unadventurous. And or is unadventurous a word? I think that's yeah. Sure. So I'm just I don't know. It's been I woke up not too long before this call. Sorry, but
no, it's fine.
I don't know. I just feel like it's just gotten way too much about can my band be bigger than your band, and it's dude, who cares whose band's bigger? Just do your own thing, but let's all do it together. I don't know.
Kind of shifting gears a little bit, something that kind of intrigued me when listening to your interview with Scott on the Good Company show is, it just seems like you've been able to manifest a lot for yourself in the band through all of your hard work and perseverance. Have any bands or labels approached you to do any A&R work or any band management stuff?
They haven't, but I've thought about doing some band management myself, and I help out some of my friends' bands that are unsigned and stuff. I'm not for money or anything right now, but I do think about band management a lot, and I feel like I would be a good manager, just because number one, I care, and I don't know. I just feel like something a lot of managers don't have is the ability to relate to bands that tour and sleep in vans and stuff, and I feel like I would be able to do that very well. But I don't know. I'm right now. I'm still in the position of really trying to, make Islander successful. So I feel like there's not really time to to do that for another band right now, but in the future, I'm definitely considering band management. So if there's a band out there listening to this, you need a manager, talk to me. Maybe, who knows, maybe this time is the time. But I don't know. I do love the DIY culture, though. I don't sit around and wait for the record label to tell me what to do. I'm always like thinking about, shooting music videos and all that kind of stuff. So
it's just kind of interesting. It's one of those things where, I feel like now, I want to say really in the last 10 years, but I'll just focus on the last 5, since social media has become as prevalent as it is, with things such as TikTok and everything, that it's not necessarily about being a band or being an individual that's in a band. You're basically a brand now. And the thing that's always kind of interesting about thinking about that is, you're looking at, like I mentioned Zoltan from Five Finger. He's arguably one of the biggest hard rock band, metal bands, whatever you want to define them as, in the world. But he's also managing 2 bands that are on the rise, and he just believes so much in music and wants to give back and so forth, that you're seeing these people kind of finding different lanes that they work in and are able to use their acumen of knowledge that they've accrued over their career. And even seeing someone like, I know Andy from Every Time I Die for a little bit was doing some like light A&R type stuff for Metal Blade, I believe. And so it seems that people are trying to find any way that they can be successful in the music industry. I'm even looking at Ken Susi recently. In the last couple of years, he's partnered with Fishman Pickups and become kind of a brand ambassador who's going around and getting all these, guitar players and musicians on board with the brand, doing interviews. Like this past week, he's been doing a lot of interviews with guitar players and posting them on the Fishman Facebook. So you're starting to see, like I said, so many people kind of finding different lanes within the industry, as well as doing their own band and kind of continuing on, but realizing that I think being in a band is only finite, and you have to find things to do with the other 23 and a half hours or 22 and a half hours of being on the road and what you do in your downtime. So it just seems like one of those things for you that I could see you being, a co-writer with bands. I could see you maybe being an A&R guy or being a band manager or something, but just didn't know if that's something that you're looking into currently, or if your vision is somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think about being a band manager just because, again, like I want to cultivate, a scene that isn't just out to get people and F everybody or whatever, because I feel like a lot of the industry is that. So I feel like the more people we have in it that are legit, I feel like that, we can start weeding out slowly the darkness that's in it. But I think that, again, for me, right now, I'm so focused on Islander and just our future right now, because we still have so far to go in the realm of what people deem success or whatever. As far as I'm concerned, I've already been successful with the band. It's just about being able to get to a place where we can keep doing it, because I have a wife, we all have families and stuff. It's hard to tour and not think about the business side, but our hearts have just never been like, I think sometimes it hurts because it hurts us that we're not more money driven. Like we're just so about the people that we forget sometimes that it is a business. But I think it's good too, because it keeps our band honest and it keeps it real, because you're never going to find Islander just doing something for a paycheck or whatever. It's like, dude, like Islander's a real band. Like we care about human beings.
Right. Kind of the last few questions I have for you as we wind this down. I didn't necessarily know how I wanted to bring this up, but I do think in light of kind of what we're talking about as far as some of the things that have happened throughout your career and how they've affected you, good, bad, or indifferent. I remember really seeing you guys come onto the scene really in light of the Warped Tour incident that happened, that you guys were a part of. And a lot of people came to your aid. Like a lot of your friends kind of stood up for you guys, in thinking that, you shouldn't have been booted off the tour for the remainder of the dates you had left or whatever. But I kind of I don't think I've really seen you really talk about it, other than I think like an official press release. But, now that we're as far back as we are from that incident happening, do you feel that kind of actually brought Islander to a bigger audience, maybe that you wouldn't have even gotten going and doing a full Warped Tour in the crowd that you're on, because now people kind of are at least aware of who you are and they're checking you out? The old adage, basically, there is no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, I think so. I think that that whole incident, just so anybody that's listening that doesn't know what happened, was I dove into a drum kit at the end of the set, and it dented the drum kit in the side, like it just put like a dent in it. And it wasn't our drum kit, but for some reason in my head, I wasn't really thinking about that. It was a backline kit that the stage had rented or whatever for all the bands to use. And I don't know, I just wasn't thinking about it. I shouldn't have dove into somebody else's kit, but at the same time, the music just kind of took over. And we had our kit with us, and we had wanted to use it, but they wouldn't let us. And we offered for the rest of the tour. We said, number one, we were going to pay for it 100%. That's the first thing we told them. And everything was cool. We had talked to the stage managers and the sound guys and everything that were at the festival, and they were like, dude, totally cool. We get it. Thanks so much for taking care of it. So number one, we were going to pay for it. Number two, we had our drum kit with us that was actually way nicer. And we were like, hey, everybody's welcome to use this drum. It was just a floor tom, by the way. We were like, they can use it as long as they need. And they were like, no, that's not even necessary. The other drum kit works perfectly. They said it's just got a dent in it, so they just can't turn it back into the company that they rented it from with the dent in it without it being paid for. And we were like, cool, well, we'll pay for it. So that was kind of the extent of it. But when it got back to Kevin Lyman, I think that he was just so busy at the time and had so much going on with like it being the last Warped Tour or whatever. I don't really feel like I feel like when it got back to him, he thought the stage burnt down or something. Like it just, you know what I mean? Like how it's like hearsay.
It's that classic game of telephone.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't blame him because, again, I don't feel like he fully understood the situation. The only thing that upsets me a little is I don't feel like he tried to understand the situation more, because I never really got to just say like, hey, here's what it is and what happened and have you seen it? And, but yeah, we went to his office and he booted us off the tour, and it was all good vibes, though. I mean, like, it wasn't like we were punching each other or anything. We shook each other's hands and told each other we loved each other. And again, though, I will say he wasn't super jumping on, like, understanding or hearing what had happened. It was just kind of like, I don't need to know what else happened. I just know something happened and you guys need to get gone. And so, like, it ended up being a way, way bigger deal than it actually should have been. But to answer your question, yes, I think that, considering we were playing the tour without pay, and this was the first day we had ever played the tour. This is what's even crazier. It was day one. Day one for us anyways. Like we jumped on the tour about a week and a half late or something, but we weren't even getting paid or fed on the tour. So for us, we were kind of like, well, at least we get to save some money and go shoot a music video now for the song My Friends, which features Eric from I Prevail. But yeah, it was just a weird thing. It was like, I don't know. I saw it end up on Rolling Stone and Billboard and everything, because like Head from Korn started, telling Kevin that it was kind of messed up, because Korn's taken us out 3 times at that point. And I think that Head knew, it was like, dude, like Islander's not going to just be, assholes. So,
yeah.
And then, Corey Taylor had said something, and Sonny from POD asked why Warped Tour became such pansies, and then Stevis from the Fever 333 jumped in, and I don't know, it was just I appreciate everybody getting involved, and some people got upset with us for sharing every single publication. But here's the issue: when you have a band like Islander that's trying to get noticed all the time, if Billboard and Rolling Stone are posting about my band, I don't really care what capacity it's in. I'm just going to share it.
No, I do the same thing, man. Like sometimes like stuff will get picked up on this show. Like I've had Alt Press pick up on a couple episodes, and I'm like, man, Alt Press picked this up? Jesus, all right. Like I'm sharing it, and like I feel bad sometimes for some of the things that happen, but it's like, dude, I'm a DIY podcast. I don't spend any money on advertising or anything, so unfortunately, like for me, the guest or whoever, like if something gets picked up and maybe it's not making them look the best. I'm sorry, like, they knew it was being recorded, but
Yeah.
it's cool for me, you know, like, so I totally get what you're saying. That's why I was saying, like, I don't think people understand sometimes that even though most of the press probably makes you look bad in theory, it's still getting your name out to a demographic and an audience that you couldn't have paid for.
Exactly.
Or if you could, the amount of money you would have paid for to get a Rolling Stone mention would have been so stupidly high that you couldn't have afforded to.
Right. So that's what the whole thing was. It was like, man, like, you know, we weren't throwing shade or anything. I feel like we were very respectful and maybe even beyond what we should have been. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I do know that it blew out of proportion, but we got more press out of it than if we kept playing the tour and not being paid. So, so who really won here? I don't know.
You know, kind of the last question I had for you, you know, like, obviously we're in a very unprecedented time here in the music industry as far as dealing with COVID-19 and tours being canceled and all this kind of stuff. We're seeing records getting pushed back. We're seeing, you know, tours that were, you know, I was actually having a conversation with my wife this morning, walking our dog, you know, and just kind of being like, you know, there are tours that, you know, are getting rescheduled that are affecting the people who are trying to go out for fall and winter tours, because now everyone's trying to snatch up the same dates and there are bands pushing their stuff back into next year. Movies are getting scrapped until next year now, you know, release dates. And, you know, just seeing even in the music industry, or I'm sorry, the movie industry, that movies are coming out for a more of a premium to be able to watch them from your homes instead of, because you can't go to a theater. How do you think this is going to affect the music industry moving forward with ways of releasing things, with touring? Do you think everything's going to kind of go back to normal relatively quickly, or do you think this is going to have a much larger reaching impact on the industry?
You know, I don't know a future, obviously, but I would say I'm obviously not happy any of this has happened. I mean, my aunt died. Everybody's losing money. I'm not on tour. Like, there's just been so many things. So I'm not saying that this is positive, but I try to look for the positives and things. So I think one thing that this could help is the bands that are doing it for the wrong reasons. Hopefully, some of them get weeded out through this process. And the bands that are doing it for the right reasons, like Islander, and if we weren't doing it for the right reasons, you know, I wouldn't be able just to say that so bluntly, because I feel like some people might think like, oh, you mean you just do it for the right reasons? It's like, dude, like that's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about bands like POD and Korn and Islander and 68, and just stuff like that's doing it for the right reasons, in the sense that we don't wait for people to tell us when we're going to tour or tell us when we're going to have an Instagram live video, or I don't know. Like, I just feel so passionately that this whole process could weed out some of the bands that don't understand the DIY culture, because Islander has always thrived under the pressure of crisis, whether it be big or small. Like if our van breaks down or whatever, we look for solutions instead of the complaining, you know, aspects of whatever it is we could do. We just say, like, what can we make come of this? And I don't know. I just feel like a lot of the bands are going to be weeded out, hopefully, that aren't in it for the right reasons. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, I definitely kind of agree with that on a multitude of levels. I think you can extend that to the music industry side of things as well.
Oh yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
whole different topic.
No, yeah, no, it's the whole thing, and I think that, I mean, again, like going into like the actual music industry thing, I think that certain things that could go out of business or whatever from this. Again, I don't wish that on anybody. I want us all to thrive and to do well, but I want us to do it for the right reasons. And I think there's just so much darkness in entertainment industry in general, that, you know, the ones that are here that just want to love people and not do it for money, or because a lot of people right now are like, oh my gosh, I'm losing money. It's like, dude, Islander already didn't have any money. We're so poor when it comes to our bands. I mean, our band, that we literally, this isn't affecting us in the same way, because we're just like, well, whenever we're able to tour again, we'll just, I guess we'll just get back in the van and go. Like, it doesn't, I don't know. It's just not that we're not really losing right now. Right now, we've been more busy this year with this whole thing than we were before it. Like, we had a tour booked with Papa Roach and Hollywood Undead that wasn't even announced yet. I don't even know if it's happening. I mean, I'm sure it's not, but like, I haven't heard the official, like, hey, it's canceled. But like, I just feel like I don't know if any tours are happening this year at this point. And I think that the bands that are just upset and that they're not playing, you know, they're going to not find the solutions in there to be creative and keep doing this. So I'm happy about that. But again, I don't wish it on anybody to go broke or anything. I hope everybody's successful and doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to chat. I know I probably had you a little bit longer than I was supposed to, but greatly appreciated. Like I said, I heard you on a lot of podcasts and so forth, but really getting to hear you talk long form and not necessarily pushing anything on Scott's show really kind of informed me that I was like, man, I need to get Mikey on this show and really kind of get some of that good free-flowing conversation that it seems like you really thrive in when you're doing press of this kind of variety.
Dude, thanks so much for having me, and let's do it again sometime. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, whenever some new music or a record or EP or whatever the industry looks like and will allow you to put out, yeah, we'll definitely do another one of these. It'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, again, whoever's listening, please go check out our cover of R.E.M's It's the End of the World as We Know It, and I Feel Fine on YouTube. It's coming out April 24th on all streaming platforms and Apple Music, Spotify, all that stuff. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully this year we'll get to see you guys out on the road, and hopefully maybe you'll be somewhere in the Midwest or here in Michigan at least, so we can maybe link up and actually meet in person, because I always like to try to at least meet the person that I've talked to and felt like I kind of built a little bit of a rapport with in person if possible.
Dude, absolutely. Let me know when we're in your area. I'll throw you on the guest list.
Oh, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully no more accidents with the pup.
Thanks, brother. You too.
Yeah, have a good one. So that was my conversation with Mikey from Islander. Want to give a huge shout out to Mikey for taking the time and being so forthcoming and honest with everything. Always greatly appreciated when anyone does that, especially, you know, considering more or less we're just complete strangers and have only known each other for 45 minutes. And usually at that point, you know, 20 some odd minutes in, it's like, hey, let me ask you some really serious questions about your career and your friends. And, you know, if you were to do that to someone in public that you don't know, you'd probably get punched in the face.
More than likely, yes.
So always appreciative. Mikey and I have texted a couple times, just kind of keeping up with his puppy, because like I said, we just got one almost a month ago now, as of when we're recording this. It's been a lot of late nights, early mornings, going outside every 30-40 minutes.
Yep.
And getting your fingers bit because she's teething and all that kind of stuff. So lots of fun. I assume it's like having a child.
I have a baby. Well, the only difference between them, I'm ripping this off of Scrub, so, you know, take it how you will. Having a baby is like having a dog that slowly learns to talk.
Yeah. That's the only thing about that I would want from a baby, if I could put it toward an animal, is I don't know what my dog's thinking or doing or wants. And I wish, she would learn to talk so I could figure that out. Because, like today, for example, it was too quiet. And I started looking around for her, and I hear click, click, like of something chomping in her teeth. And I go over there and pull it out of her mouth, and she's trying to eat a thumbtack.
Right.
And I was like, well, that would have cost me thousands of dollars to get out of your stomach. So glad I caught that.
Right.
So, but no, puppies are great. They're fun. This chat was fun. I really don't have a whole lot to say. Sometimes these things kind of go a little bit longer than maybe they need to. So I think just thinking the sake of getting everything done and wrapped up, if you would like to keep up with Islander, it is simple enough. You can go to islanderofficial.com. Check up with everything going on over there. Facebook at Islander Official, Instagram at Islander, and Twitter at Islander_band. If you would like to keep up with Mikey, it's simple enough. You can find him under his name on Instagram. That's MikeyCarvaval. And same thing on Twitter, just with an underscore in between first and last name. And if you would like to keep up with Dan, he can tell you where he can be found on the interwebs.
Well, I can be found all over the place, man. I can be found on Twitter at DiscussMetalDan, on Gmail at DiscussMetalDan@gmail.com, or danandjoeshow@gmail.com. Well, pick your poison on that one. You can also find my other podcast, Discography Discussion, at discussmetal.com. You can find Discography Discussion on Instagram, on Facebook, all that other good stuff. And there's a lot of cross-promotion. So if you come to this show, definitely check out that one. If you came from our show, or if you came from Discography Discussion checking out Brewtally Speaking, we are so glad that you were here. And I appreciate all of you on both sides of the fence. Tear down the fence.
And if you would like to keep up with all things this podcast, simple enough, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at BrewSpeakPod. Email us at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. I am almost finished, as of when we're recording this, almost finished with the Brewtally Speaking podcast website. A lot of love going into this thing. A lot of help from a mutual friend who I'll do all the plugs for that shit when we finally launch this thing. But for now, it is still a temporary work in progress. So look for that coming soon. We have pins. If you would like to support us monetarily, I'm trying to get these things out of here. $10 gets rid of them. Free shipping in the US. If you live anywhere internationally, email us, DM us, whatever. We'll figure out a way to get these out to you. Would like to make that happen. Patreon.com/BrewSpeakPod. There's some episodes up over there. That's another way to support us monetarily if you would be so inclined. Another way to support us sort of monetarily is supporting our sponsors. You can head over to rockabilia.com, get you some awesome swag. They actually have one Islander piece of merch. It is a Dracula crew sweatshirts. Pretty interesting. I don't know any correlation to song lyrics or the band or anything, but if you're into Dracula and you like Islander, fuck it, there you go. That's the perfect marriage between those two things for you. Rockabilia has over 500,000 items on their website, whether you're into bands, whether you're into pop culture stuff, whether you like TVs, movies. If you like something on this show, you know that they have something for you, and you don't have to worry about the integrity of the products. They are 100% guaranteed, and they actually are officially licensed, so you know it's not bootleg-ass shit like you find on eBay and some of these other junk sites. Everything is licensed, so you know it's good. Support the band, support Rockabilia for supporting us. Head on over to rockabilia.com. If you're a first-time user, if you give them your email, you get 10% off, so take advantage of that if you are able to. And also, speaking of support, go over and support the Bean Bastard. Go to thebeanbastard.com, Facebook and Instagram at The Bean Bastard. Pick you up some delicious coffee. I actually have a bag of the new Sproton pack on its way. Like I said, this company loves their 80s movies and so forth, so this is obviously a Ghostbusters themed blend that they're doing. I'm very excited to try this. I'm not even necessarily the biggest coffee drinker, but everything that I have tried of theirs, I really enjoy and love. You can taste the love and the craft that they put into making their coffee and making sure it is the best coffee that it can possibly be. So if you're a coffee drinker or a fanatic in these tough times, and I know you need a cup to wake up and go on with your day, go to the Bean Bastard and support them because they are a small local Buffalo, New York business. Lastly but not leastly, On Point Pomade. My wife's actually been doing my hair. Dan can actually see the cornrows that I have currently.
Oh, yeah, I can see them. And you put them on Facebook for everyone to see, so everybody check that out.
Yeah, my wife, my hair is long enough now to do various braids, so almost every day my wife likes to braid my hair and then post it on Facebook and Instagram apparently now. But all of that aside, if you aren't like me and actually have a decent set of hair and you're able to style it, or your beard and you want to keep them looking good, go to onpointpomade.com, use our code BSP15, save 15% off your total order, keep your hair and beard looking on point. Want to thank all of our sponsors for supporting us in these rough times. If you are able to do such and support them as well, be greatly appreciated. And for the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I am Dan.
We will talk to you all next time.
Oh, wow, that was so... Oh, that fucking sucked. Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Coach, what'd you think? Okay. Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks. But you knew what you were getting into. Oh, John. Thanks for this. I'm really sorry about the GarageBand thing. I just Google shitty drum beats, and that's how I play them. But if you can figure out a way to use it, I don't fucking care. It's your own fault. it will result in less listens. You're going to see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you, don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. But it's yours.